So I'm going to talk today about the Traditional Buildings Health Check Scheme. Let me just hide that. Which was a 5-year pilot that we ran between 2013 and 2018. So the main aim of the Traditional Buildings Health Check pilot was really to look at supporting owners to take a more proactive approach to inspecting, maintaining and repairing their buildings. So the key aims of the pilot were to look at how we could maybe change the behaviour of Scottish building owners, to test would owners even join a scheme like this, a membership-based scheme. Would the scheme and would becoming a member change their behaviour, and what impact would that have on the local historic environment? And ultimately, would a scheme like this and would this pilot demonstrate a potential model to change the behaviour of other owners in other parts of Scotland? So a little bit of background, this was obviously a pilot scheme that was run in Scotland. We have around 455,000 traditionally constructed dwellings in Scotland. Generally speaking, we would consider traditionally constructed buildings to be those built before around 1919. So those traditionally constructed dwellings make up roughly 20% of Scotland's total housing stock. So it's a big chunk of the total housing stock in Scotland. And it's estimated that 85% of existing traditional buildings will still be in use in 2050. So these buildings have been around a long time. We hope they will be around for a long time more and still be in use. So issues around disrepair and their ability to deal with the impacts of climate change is obviously a big concern. So there's been growing concern over the deteriorating condition of Scotland's traditional buildings. And this was really evidenced by the findings of the 2010 Scottish House Condition Survey, which showed that 76% of traditional dwellings needed repairs to critical elements. Critical elements are classed as those parts of a building that keep it wind and watertight and structurally sound. So they're really key important parts of a building. And that Scottish House Condition Survey is carried out by the Scottish Government. So that was back in 2010. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here. Obviously, high levels of disrepair are of great concern. They reduce a building's resilience to the effects of climate change, never mind just normal weather. And the added impacts of that, of course, are that poorly maintained buildings do impact on the well-being of their occupants. It makes the buildings more cold and damp, and it can increase fuel poverty and the impacts of that. Also, particularly in terms of the public realm, it contributes to increased incidence of high-level masonry falls, and we're seeing increasing incidence of masonry falls across Scotland. So as we've been hearing all about today, Scotland's climate is obviously changing. It's becoming wetter, more severe and frequent severe weather events. And this is putting increased pressure on buildings which are already vulnerable to the weather because they're simply not being maintained, that the basics are not being done. And this is an added problem because there is no national strategy in Scotland to deal with and promote essential repair and maintenance. And we're missing an opportunity to embed adaptation into routine repair and maintenance, simple things that could be incorporated into routine maintenance and repair. So we know that building owner behaviour is a big factor. It's a key contributing factor to the high rates of repair. Owners simply aren't regularly inspecting their buildings. They usually only do something when something serious happens, when a problem that they can't miss happens. And more serious repair issues, like high-level issues, things that you can't see immediately, that aren't immediately obvious, can go unnoticed for years. And even in the group of owners who might be more proactive, these people often lack confidence and knowledge to commission appropriate repairs, and they're often very suspicious of contractor advice. An added problem in Scotland, where we have a tradition of traditionally built Scottish tenements, so purpose-built apartment blocks, typically 19th century, and these tend to be in multiple ownership. This is a long-standing barrier to proactive maintenance. It's a particular problem in places like Edinburgh, where factors aren't standard practice. And there's an apathy. Absentee landlords, high rates of turnover create additional logistical complications for coordinating multiple owners. And very often there are owners who are uncooperative, which is a huge barrier to proactive owners who perhaps do want to take action. So we, back in 2010, and then a couple of years later in 2012, after the findings of the condition survey, we knew that there was a problem, and we wanted to try and figure out what we might do about it. So the Scottish Housing Condition Survey highlighted the need to change building owner behaviours. So we commissioned, that is Historic Scotland as it was then, we commissioned a scoping study in 2012 to look at a possible solution. The scoping study was prepared by Stirling City Heritage Trust, and it set out the evidence for the need of a maintenance scheme to support building owners in Scotland, and it looked at how this might be done and set out some recommendations. So the scoping study proposed a scheme that was based on the European Monumentenwacht model. This scheme has been running for several decades in Northern Europe, in the Netherlands and Flanders, and we know that it has made a significant impact on the historic environment there. By providing an impartial, that's a key point, an impartial, subsidised expert building inspection service. So these are services where you have building inspectors who have expertise in looking at traditional buildings, which obviously need a different approach to buildings that have been constructed using modern materials and techniques. So, looking at Scotland, what did we do? So on the back of the 2012 scoping study, we instigated a traditional buildings health check. It was funded by Historic Environment Scotland, the Construction Industry Training Board Scotland, and Stirling City Heritage Trust. It was designed and delivered by Stirling City Heritage Trust, and they established the pilot service in Stirling. So it was set up in 2013. It took a little bit of time to get everything in place, to get staff members in post, get insurance in place, get all of the equipment and the facilities that we needed. So the service was operational from October 2014. And the service was open to any traditional building, home or business, public or community building within the Stirling City boundary. And it was really important for us to make this service open to any type of building. The building didn't need to be listed, it didn't need to be in a conservation area. So really, we wanted to make this open to as many building owners as possible. And additionally, for the likes of traditional Scottish tenements that have multiple owners, only one owner needed to become a member in order to access the inspection service. We didn't want that to be an additional barrier to people being proactive. So how did it work? So this was a membership-based scheme. It was kind of based on an adapted version of the Monumentenwacht scheme. And by paying your membership fee, you were then you had access to year-round support and impartial expert advice from the building inspectors, and you had access to an affordable, comprehensive external building inspection, usually around about £150 per building. Once your building had been inspected, you'd get an easy-to-understand condition report with priority tasks set out for the next 12 months, and you'd get a free follow-up meeting with an inspector. From 2015, a small grant was also available for external, eligible external repairs. And on the back of it, we also provided, or Stirling City Heritage Trust also provided educational events, newsletters, and dedicated members' website. So that was the scheme. It was a membership-based scheme, and it ran for 5 years, as I said, until 2018. So what did we find out from the pilot? Well, from October 2014, nearly 300 members joined. The inspectors inspected 144 buildings, and repairs were commissioned to around about 120 properties, which we think is a fantastic result. One of the most important things for us was seeing that almost £1.3 million was invested by our members in their properties. So that was an investment of £1.3 million in the historic environment over the lifetime of the pilot. So we found that an easy to understand, prioritised building inspection report was a really effective way at improving property owner knowledge. These reports were designed and were developed over the lifetime of the pilot to be really easy to understand, and they used a traffic lights system to make it easy for owners to understand what were the priority actions that needed to be done immediately and what things could they schedule over the next 12 months. So these reports really enabled properties to feel more motivated to act. They felt more empowered and confident commissioning repair work because they understood the condition of their property in more detail. So really the end result was that these reports, becoming a member, helped the members to spend their money wisely. It helped them to spend their money on the most effective maintenance and repairs. So even where we had members who were fairly proactive, did tend to maintain their buildings, quite often our inspectors were finding really, really poor quality repairs or poorly spec'd repair work. So giving owners the knowledge to commission the most appropriate repairs at the best time was really a crucial part of this. And members trusted the service and the advice it provided. That was a key benefit of this scheme. It was an impartial service, so they felt really confident in the advice that it was giving, and it gave them reassurance. So we found out a lot about how members found the scheme through conducting member services, a member survey, So from our survey, we know that becoming a member encourages them to use the right materials and techniques. Many building owners did more repair work than would have been the case if they hadn't had their inspection report done. And many of them carried out works and commissioned repairs much quicker than they would have done otherwise. So we know that these reports have had a really big impact on how members' buildings are being looked after. So the inspection findings, our inspectors kind of came across some fairly scary things in the course of their work. 88% of the buildings that they looked at required work within the next 12 months, 88% of them. 63% required urgent or immediate repair or maintenance, which really backs up the findings of the 2010 Scottish Housing Conditions Survey. The inspectors also found many poor quality or inappropriate repairs and long-term neglect of high-level masonry, which is of particular concern, particularly chimneys. And many owners simply were unaware of this. And a lot of dangerous working practices were also encountered, as you can see in that was one example pictured on the right-hand side of this screen. So this type of inspection service can help building owners to change their approach to the care of their buildings. The scheme works. It demonstrates the potential of a health check service to affect widespread change to the historic environment in a local area. And it provides a starting model for the delivery of the service in other locations. So what is the future? Now that we've completed and concluded the pilot, we know it works. We've had very positive membership feedback. We've had 1.3 million invested in the local historic environment. Where do we go from here? Well, the traditional building health check service continues to be delivered by Stirling City Heritage Trust as a core part of their operation. The 2018 Scottish Housing Conditions Survey reported that 73% of pre-1919 buildings require repairs to critical elements. So the need for a service like this is not going away. The need for building owners to take a more proactive approach to looking after their buildings is only going to increase as the impacts of climate change continue to develop and put increasing pressure on our traditional buildings. So in late 2019, we commissioned an options appraisal looking at how this scheme might be rolled out to additional areas in Scotland. We had identified 3 additional partners in Fife, Perth and Kinross and Falkirk. And the options appraisal was delivered in February 2020, setting out a series of recommendations of how that might be achieved. Obviously, now, with the situation that we're in currently, it's difficult to have a definite way forward. A service like this remains a priority. It's a key way of helping us to adapt and approach creating more resilient buildings in the face of climate change. So while Historic Environment Scotland's funding, like so many other organisations, will be severely impacted at the moment, this remains for us a really important and critical challenge to take forward to help meet the effects of climate change. And we've set out the groundwork. We've done our pilot and we've done our options appraisal. So really, we've set out the groundwork to take this forward when we're able to do so. So thank you very much. I hope you found that interesting. We are producing a review report, which we'll be publishing in the coming months, which outlines everything that I've mentioned today, gives a little bit more information on the background and the results of the pilot. And my contact details are there if anyone would like to get in touch, as are the contact details for the traditional building health check service that's being delivered in Scotland, in Stirling. So thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the day.